Here rests what you need to understand right now. The battle between socialism and capitalism isn't an economic debate. It's a moral war. And one side has been winning by default for decades, not because their ideas work, but because the other side is too scared to defend what's right. You've been told capitalism is greed, that profit is dirty, that wanting success makes you selfish. Meanwhile, socialism wraps itself in compassion, equality, and caring for others. It sounds beautiful. It sounds moral. But Ayn Rand saw through this lie 50 years ago. And she didn't just critique socialism, she destroyed its moral foundations so completely that defenders have spent decades avoiding her arguments instead of answering them. This isn't about policy anymore. This is about whether you have the right to your own life or whether you exist to serve others. Whether achievement should be celebrated or punished, whether you're a traitor or a slave. And here's the part that will make you angry: the people who should be defending capitalism. They're not. They're compromising, apologizing, and handing victory to an ideology that has failed every single time it's been tried. Ayn Rand didn't compromise. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why she was right and why this matters to your life right now. So what's the real enemy here? It's not just socialism. It's the moral code that makes socialism possible in the first place. Ayn Rand called it altruism. And before you say, wait, what's wrong with helping people? Stop. That's not what altruism means philosophically. Altruism doesn't mean kindness or generosity. It means the moral principle that you exist to serve others. That self-sacrifice is virtuous. That living for yourself is evil. This is the poison at the root of socialism. Socialism doesn't say, let's help the poor. It says, you have no right to your own life. It says the person who creates value owes their product to those who didn't create it. It says achievement is a debt you must pay to society. It says your time, your effort, your mind, none of it belongs to you. And here's the trick. Socialism doesn't argue this with guns first. It argues it with guilt. It tells you that wanting to keep what you earn is selfish. That building a successful business while others struggle is immoral. That if you have more, you're somehow responsible for those who have less, even if you never harmed them, never stole from them, and actually created the value you have. This is the moral inversion. Socialism turns producers into villains and non-producers into victims. It makes success a sin and failure a claim on others. Ayn Rand identified this contradiction in every socialist system throughout history. The Soviet Union didn't fail because of bad management. It failed because it was built on the idea that some people exist to serve others and human beings do and function that way. You can't force men to produce at gunpoint forever. Eventually they stop, or they leave. Or they pretend to work while the system collapses. Venezuela didn't run out of resources. It ran out of producers willing to produce when everything they create gets taken. Cuba didn't lose its talent by accident. Talented people fled because talent wants to be rewarded, not sacrificed. Every socialist experiment in history has operated on the same moral premise. Individual rights don't exist. Only collective needs matter. And whoever controls the collective controls you. And here's what makes this truly insidious. The Founding Fathers of America explicitly rejected this premise. The Declaration of Independence says you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not the right to sacrifice yourself, not the duty to serve the collective. The right to pursue your happiness. But socialism says that's immoral. Socialism says the founders were wrong. That individual rights are a luxury we can't afford. That freedom must be sacrificed for equality. Ayn Rand understood this wasn't a policy disagreement. This was a fundamental opposition between two views of human existence. Are you born free or born in debt to everyone else? Socialism's answer is clear. You're born in debt. You owe society. You owe the poor. You owe the collective. And you'll keep paying until there's nothing left. Now let's look at what Ayn Rand actually defended and why it's the exact opposite of socialism. Capitalism, in Rand's view, isn't about money. It's about freedom. It's the only system where you own your own life. Where you can think, produce, and trade without asking permission from a collective. Where achievement is yours to keep, not confiscated because someone else needs it more. Here's the moral foundation of capitalism, according to Ayn Rand: rational self-interest. Not the self-interest of a thug who takes what he wants. The self-interest of a producer who creates value and trades it voluntarily with others who benefit from what he offers. Think about it. When you buy something, both sides win. You get a product you value more than your money. The seller gets money they value more than the product. Nobody sacrificed. Nobody lost. Both of you pursued your own interest and both of you are better off. That's capitalism. Mutual benefit through voluntary trade. Socialism destroys this. It says one person's need creates a claim on another person's life. If you're hungry, someone else must feed you. If you're poor, someone else must pay. Not through charity, they can say no to charity, but through force. Through taxes. Through redistribution. Let's break down the contrast. In capitalism, you succeed by serving others voluntarily. Steve Jobs didn't force anyone to buy an iPhone. He created something people wanted and became wealthy because millions chose to trade with him. His wealth was earned. Every dollar represented a person who said, "Yes, I want this. Here's my money." In socialism, you survive by forcing others to serve you. You don't need to create value. You just need to vote for someone who promises to take from producers and give to you. Your livelihood depends on the government's ability to confiscate someone else's production. In capitalism, virtue is active. You build, you create. You think, you work. Success requires effort, intelligence, and integrity. You can't fake competence in a free market, for long reality exposes fraud. In socialism, virtue is passive. You suffer. You need. You're a victim. The more helpless you are, the more you're owed. Dependency becomes a moral credential. And the greatest sin? Not needing help. Being self-sufficient. That makes you the enemy. In capitalism, your ability determines your rewards. A genius inventor can become wealthy. A lazy heir can lose everything. The market doesn't care about your excuses, it cares about results. This is merit-based. This is justice. In socialism, your need determines your rewards. A productive doctor and an unemployed addict have equal claims on society, yes, resources, because fairness means ignoring merit. This isn't compassion. This is the destruction of cause and effect. Look at the practical results. Capitalism produced the Industrial Revolution. It created the middle class. It turned America from colonies into the wealthiest nation in history in less than 2 centuries. It gave you the device you're watching this on, the car you drive, the medicine that saves lives. Every technological advancement you take for granted came from minds that were free to think and profit from their thinking. Socialism? The Soviet Union collapsed. Venezuela went from the richest country in South America to people eating zoo animals. Cuba has been frozen in the 1950s for 70 years. North Korea is a prison camp. Every socialist country either collapses or abandons socialism to survive, like China did when it adopted market reforms. And here's what socialism's defenders will say. That wasn't real socialism. No, that was perfectly real socialism. It just did what socialism always does. It ran out of other people's money. It ran out of producers willing to produce for free. It discovered that you can't build a society on theft and call it justice. Ayn Rand saw this moral contrast clearly. Capitalism says, I have the right to live for myself. Socialism says, you have the duty to live for others. Capitalism celebrates the trader, the person who offers value and asks for value in return. Socialism celebrates the beggar, the person who offers nothing and demands everything. Capitalism rewards those who think. Socialism punishes those who succeed. One system is based on respect for human life and freedom. The other is based on envy and force. And if you're still not convinced, ask yourself this. Why do people flee socialist countries to get to capitalist ones and never the other way around? Why did East Germans risk death to escape to West Germany? Why do Cubans build rafts to reach Florida? Why did the Berlin Wall have guns pointed inward to keep people from leaving? Because deep down everyone knows freedom works. Force doesn't. Now here where this gets frustrating and where Ayn Rand separated herself from almost everyone who claims to defend capitalism. Because the greatest threat to capitalism isn't socialism. It's the cowards who claim to support capitalism, but refuse to defend it morally. Let me be clear, I'm talking about the conservatives, the businessmen, the politicians who say they believe in free markets, but the moment someone calls them greedy, they apologize. They backtrack. They compromise. They say things like, yes, capitalism works, but we need a safety net. Yes, profit is good, but businesses have a social responsibility. Yes, freedom matters, but we can't be selfish. This is surrender. And Ayn Rand called it out 50 years ago. She said the reason capitalism keeps losing ground to socialism isn't because socialism's arguments are better. It's because capitalism's defenders won't make the moral case. They'll defend capitalism on practical grounds. It's efficient. It creates wealth. It works. But they won't say the one thing that matters most. Capitalism is morally right. Instead, they accept socialism's moral premise. They agree that self-sacrifice is good and self-interest is bad. Then they try to argue that capitalism somehow isn't really selfish, that it accidentally helps people. That profit is okay as long as you feel guilty about it and give some back. This is why they lose. You cannot win a moral argument by conceding the morality to your opponent. Here are 3 arguments you hear all the time from weak defenders of capitalism and why they're pathetic. Argument number 1. Capitalism lifts people out of poverty. Okay, true. But here's the problem. This argument implies that capitalism value depends on whether it helps the poor. That the measure of a system is how much it sacrifices the successful for the struggling. That's socialism's standard. You just adopted it. The correct argument is, capitalism is right because it respects individual rights. Because it lets people live for themselves. The fact that it also creates prosperity is a bonus, not the justification. Argument number 2. We need capitalism, but with compassion. Translation: we need freedom, but only if we feel bad about it. What does capitalism with compassion even mean? It means redistribution. It means forcing successful people to fund programs for unsuccessful people. It means freedom except when the government decides you have too much freedom. This isn't a defense of capitalism. This is socialism with better marketing. Ayn Rand would ask, why does capitalism need compassion added to it? Are you saying freedom is uncompassionate? Are you saying voluntary trade is cruel? Because if that's what you believe, you don't actually support capitalism. You're just negotiating the terms of your surrender. Argument number 3. Socialism doesn't work in practice. This one drives me crazy. Because yes, socialism doesn't work, but that's not the argument you should be making first. The reason socialism is wrong isn't because it fails. It's because it's immoral. Even if socialism worked, even if you could somehow create a prosperous society where everyone's needs were met through redistribution, it would still be evil, because it would still be slavery. You don't have the right to force people to serve you, even if it works. When you argue that socialism is bad because it's impractical, you're implying that if someone figured out how to make it work, then it would be okay. No, it wouldn't. It would still be theft. It would still be the destruction of individual rights. The moral argument comes first. The practical argument is secondary. And here's the tragedy. By refusing to make the moral case, capitalism's defenders have let socialists own the moral high ground for decades. Socialists say, we care about people. You care about money. And capitalists respond, no, we care about people too. Look, capitalism helps people. Please don't call us greedy. Pathetic. Ayn Rand's response would be, you read damn right I care about money because money represents the product of my mind and effort. And yes, I am selfish because I have the right to live for my own happiness. Your need does not give you a claim on my life. That's how you defend capitalism. With pride. With certainty. With moral clarity. Not with apologies. But that requires courage. And most defenders of capitalism don't have it. They'd rather compromise, rather apologize, rather slowly surrender, because taking a firm moral stand makes people uncomfortable, so they lose, inch by inch, year by year. They accept higher taxes, more regulations, more government control. They call it reasonable compromise. Ayn Rand called it what it is, the suicide of capitalism by those too cowardly to defend it. Now let's zoom out and look at what's actually happening in the world right now, because this isn't theoretical. This battle is playing out in real time, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Here's the geopolitical reality. Socialism is failing everywhere it's tried and succeeding everywhere it's marketed. Countries that embraced socialist policies are collapsing. But universities, media, and politicians in capitalist countries are teaching the next generation that socialism is compassion and capitalism is oppression. That's not an accident. That's a strategy. Look at the institutions pushing socialism the hardest. Universities that charge $80,000 a year. Celebrities worth hundreds of millions. Politicians with multiple homes. Tech companies built on free market innovation. You see the hypocrisy? The people advocating for socialism aren't living under it. They're benefiting from capitalism, while telling you capitalism is evil. Ayn Rand would call this exactly what it is. The parasites trying to guilt the producers into chains. Because here's who actually benefits from socialism. not the poor, the politically connected, the bureaucrats, the administrators, the people who control the redistribution. In every socialist country, there's a ruling class that lives like kings while everyone else suffers. The Soviet elite had luxury daychas while citizens stood in breadlines. Venezuelan politicians have Swiss bank accounts while the population starves. Chinese Communist Party members are billionaires while workers make pennies. Socialism doesn't eliminate inequality. It makes inequality permanent by removing your ability to rise through merit and replacing it with loyalty to those in power. And the weapon they use to make this happen? Moral guilt. They don't argue economics, they argue morality. They say, how can you defend a system where some have so much and others have so little? Don't you care about the suffering? Isn't greed the problem? That's the trap. Because the moment you accept that framework, the moment you agree that inequality itself is immoral, you've lost. You're now arguing about how much freedom to sacrifice, not whether to sacrifice it at all. The correct response is what Ayn Rand said. Inequality is not the problem. Poverty is the problem. And capitalism is the only system that has ever reduced poverty on a mass scale. You want to help the poor? Create wealth? You want opportunity? Protect freedom? You want prosperity? Defend the producers. Socialism doesn't lift the bottom up. It drags the top down. It doesn't create wealth. It destroys it. And then it blames capitalism for the destruction it caused. Here's the global consequence if socialism wins. The same thing that always happens. The productive leave or stop producing. Innovation dies. Technology stagnates. The middle class disappears. And everyone becomes equally poor except the ruling class. You think it can't happen in America? Look around. It's already starting. The top tax rate keeps rising. Regulations strangle small businesses. Entrepreneurs are called exploiters. Success is treated like theft. And the people pushing this, do they believe it? Most of them? No. They just benefit from the confusion. From the guilt. From a population that's been taught to apologize for their own success. Ayn Rand saw this pattern. Socialism isn't sustained by belief. It's sustained by the moral disarmament of its victims. The moment you accept that wanting to live for yourself is wrong, socialism wins. The moment you apologize for your success, you hand them the weapon to destroy you. So here's what you need to do. And I'm not talking about voting or sharing articles. I'm talking about something much harder and much more important. You need to stop apologizing. Stop apologizing for wanting to succeed. Stop apologizing for keeping what you earn. Stop apologizing for living your own life instead of sacrificing it to others. Because every time you apologize for capitalism, you validate socialism's moral premise. Every time you say, yes, profit is good, but ... double quotes, you've already lost. There is no but, profit is good. Period. It's the material form of achievement. And every time you accept that self-interest is bad and self-sacrifice is good, you hand socialists the moral authority to control your life. Ayn Rand understood something most people don't. This is not a policy fight. This is a fight for your self-esteem. Socialism doesn't just want your money. It wants you to feel guilty for having it. It wants you to believe that your success is undeserved, that your ambition is greed, that your refusal to sacrifice makes you immoral. And if you accept that, you'll destroy yourself. You'll work hard, achieve something, and then apologize for it. You'll build something valuable, and then let others tell you that you owe it to people who didn't build it. That's not humility. That's not compassion. That's spiritual suicide. Here's the alternative. Pride. Rational pride in what you've earned. In what you've built. In the fact that you're a producer, not a parasite. You want to know what socialism fears most? Not arguments. Not data. A person who refuses to feel guilty for their own success. Think about it. Socialism depends entirely on your willingness to sacrifice. If you say no, if you say, I have the right to live for myself, the entire system collapses. Because socialism has no moral argument against someone who rejects self-sacrifice as a virtue. They'll call you selfish. Let them. Say, yes, I am selfish. I act in my rational self-interest. And that's moral. They'll call you greedy. Let them say, yes, I want to earn money for the value I create. And there's nothing wrong with that. They'll say you don't care about others. Say, I care about people who deserve it, people who create value, who live with integrity, who trade rather than steal. I don't owe my life to strangers simply because they exist. This is what Ayn Rand did. She didn't compromise. She didn't soften her message. She didn't apologize for defending rational selfishness. And here's the result. 50 years after her death, her books still sell millions of copies. Socialists still can't refute her arguments, they just try to ignore them. And people who read her work have a moral framework that makes them immune to guilt. That's what you need, immunity to guilt. Now, practically, here's what this looks like in your life. At work, stop downplaying your achievements. If you earned a promotion, you earned it. You don't need to say, oh, I was just lucky, or I had help. Yes, you had help in the form of voluntary relationships with people who also benefited. That's trade. That's capitalism. Be proud of it. With money, stop feeling guilty about what you have. If you worked for it, it's yours. You don't owe an explanation. You don't owe a justification. You definitely don't owe a portion of it to people who didn't earn it. In conversations, when someone says the rich should pay their fair share, ask them, what's fair? They already pay most of the taxes. What percentage of someone's income do you think you're entitled to, and why? Watch them stumble, because they don't have an answer. They just have envy disguised as morality. With family and friends, if someone tries to guilt you into sacrificing your time, money, or happiness for them, say no. A real relationship is based on mutual value, not obligation. You help people you care about because you want to, not because you owe them your life. This requires courage, because you will face resistance. People are conditioned to view self-sacrifice as noble and self-interest as evil. When you reject that, they'll be uncomfortable. They'll push back. Good, let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Ayn Rand said, the question isn't who is going to let me. It's who is going to stop me. That's the attitude you need. Not asking permission, not seeking approval. Just living your life on your terms and refusing to apologize for it. And if enough people do this, if enough people reject guilt, defend their right to exist for themselves, and refuse to fund their own destruction, socialism loses. It doesn't lose in a debate. It loses in reality. Because socialism cannot survive a population of proud, rational individuals who refuse to be sacrificed. So here's why this matters to you specifically right now, watching this video. You're part of a rare group. You're someone who questions things. Who thinks independently? Who doesn't just accept what you're told? That's why you're here. That's why you're listening to ideas most people are too scared to even consider. That makes you dangerous to socialism, because socialism depends on conformity. On people who don't ask hard questions. On guilt-driven compliance. You're not that. And that gives you a responsibility. You have the ability to see through the moral manipulation. You understand that self-interest isn't evil, it's rational. You recognize that you own your own life. Most people don't have that clarity. They're drowning in guilt, sacrificing themselves, wondering why they're miserable, and blaming capitalism for it. You know better. So here's your choice. You can stay silent, keep this knowledge to yourself, and watch socialism creep forward unchallenged. Or you can speak up, defend yourself. Defend capitalism. Not with apologies, with pride. This is the time. Not 10 years from now when it's too late. Now, while you still have the freedom to think, speak, and build without asking permission. Ayn Rand gave you the moral framework. Now you have to use it. If enough people do, capitalism wins. Freedom wins. You win. If you don't? Well, history shows us exactly what happens when producers surrender to parasites. Your move. If this video challenged you, if it gave you clarity you didn't have before, subscribe. Because I am breaking down every lie socialism tells and every truth capitalism defenders are too afraid to say. Through the Rand lens, you'll see reality as it is, not as they want you to see it. Next video. How to identify when someone is using guilt to control you and how to shut it down immediately. Thanks for watching. Now go live your life like you own it.